I live in a small town called Marshall Ridge, just over an hour outside Pittsburgh. Not exactly the kind of place you'd expect anything strange to happen. Fields, corner stores, and a single blinking red light at the one intersection we all call downtown. It's just me and my niece, Ivy. She's 12, came to live with me 2 years ago after my sister died in a fire they never fully explained. Officially, it was an accident. Unofficially, the neighborhood still whispers about that night, about the man who was seen walking out of the smoke with a red windbreaker and no face. I teach English at the local middle school. Ivy is in the 7th grade, just down the hall from my classroom. Small school. One long hallway, 12 teachers, and a cafeteria that smells like wet cardboard no matter what's for lunch. It was March 13th, 2021. A Friday. Still cold in western Pennsylvania. Still the kind of morning that makes you think about staying in bed. But the school year doesn't pause for tired eyes or bad dreams. I remember Ivy looked pale that morning. She hadn't touched her cereal. Just kept looking out the window. I asked her what was wrong, and she just said, "I think I saw him again." I asked who, but she wouldn't answer. Just grabbed her backpack and waited by the door. I didn't press her. Kids imagine things sometimes. Especially kids like Ivy, traumatized, quiet, a little too old for her age. But I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe she hadn't imagined it at all. The day started like any other. First period. Frost still on the windows. Students half awake, phones in sleeves. I was halfway through grading a short story assignment when the first strange thing happened. My phone buzzed with a parent pickup request, Ivy. Except I hadn't sent one. And I was her only legal guardian. At first, I thought it was a glitch. The school uses a digital system for pickups. If a student is being signed out early, the registered guardian gets an alert, and the office waits for confirmation before releasing the child. The alert I got read: Ivy Holloway is being signed out by Matthew Holloway. My blood ran cold. Matthew Holloway was my brother-in-law, Ivy's father. He'd been presumed dead in the same house fire that killed my sister. Officially, the fire was labeled an accident. A faulty heater. But I'd always felt there was more to it, because no remains were ever found for Matthew. Just a scorched watch they claimed belonged to him. I stared at the screen, rereading the notification. I hadn't listed anyone else as an emergency contact. The school knew that. I rushed down the hallway, trying not to panic. Ivy's classroom was 3 doors down from mine. I poked my head in and asked Mrs. Kelton to send Ivy to my room for a family matter. I didn't want to cause alarm just yet. As I turned to head back, I passed by the school office. Through the frosted glass, I saw a man standing at the reception desk. He was tall, lean. He wore a faded red windbreaker zipped up to his neck. I couldn't see his face. He was angled just enough away that it caught the light wrong, just a silhouette. A shape that didn't feel right. My stomach twisted. That windbreaker. I didn't wait. I hurried back to my classroom, pulled the blinds, and shut the door. My students were puzzled, whispering, sensing something was off. I told them to sit quietly and keep their phones down. Ivy walked in not a minute later. Her face was white as chalk. "I saw him again," she whispered. "He's here, isn't he?" That was the moment I knew. Whoever, or whatever, was standing at the front office. It wasn't just a man trying to pick up a child. It was him. And he wasn't supposed to be alive. The school lockdown alarm is unmistakable. It doesn't sound like a fire drill. It's lower, heavier, almost like a siren in a sinking ship. It went off just after Ivy sat down in the corner of my classroom. One long, vibrating whoop, followed by the mechanical voice over the intercom. Lockdown. This is not a drill. Lockdown immediately. The kids froze. A few instinctively looked to me, their faces pale, breath shallow. I dropped my voice and said what I've practiced a dozen times in safety drills. Move to the far wall. Lights off. Block the door. I hit the lights and pulled the blinds tighter. My hands were trembling as I pushed the storage cabinet against the door and had two of the bigger kids slide the supply shelves in front of it. Ivy curled up against the wall, arms wrapped around her knees. She wouldn't stop shaking. One of the boys whispered, "Is it a shooter?" I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure what kind of threat we were facing. I texted the office from my phone, quietly, hands shaking. "Who initiated the lockdown?" No answer. Just gray ticks. Message unread. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The hallway was dead quiet. No footsteps. No overhead paging. Just silence so complete it rang in my ears. And then, from the hallway, a scraping sound. Slow. Deliberate. Metal against tile. Then footsteps. Just one set. Heavy, measured. Someone stopped outside our door. I motioned for the kids to be still. Ivy's eyes were wide open, fixed on the door like it might breathe. A knock. Not a frantic one. Just one knock. Like someone wasn't asking to be let in, just to remind us they were out there. Then, "Ivy?" A man's voice. Smooth. Calm. Familiar. "Sweetheart, open the door." It was him. And he knew exactly where she was. He said her name again. "Ivy. It's okay now. You don't have to be scared. Open the door." I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from yelling. My heart was hammering so hard I thought the kids might hear it. That voice didn't sound muffled, not behind a mask, not behind glass. It sounded like he was right there, inches from the door. Too calm. Too sure. I looked at Ivy. She was crying now, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. "That's not him," she whispered. "It sounds like him, but it's not." She buried her face in her knees. "He died. I saw him die." Her voice cracked. I saw him screaming. Ivy had never talked about the fire. Not really. She'd only ever said she got out. She never mentioned what she saw. But now she was remembering. She told me, in a shaking whisper, that night she woke up coughing. The hallway was already full of smoke. Her mother had already collapsed at the top of the stairs. And her father was downstairs. She saw him in the kitchen. Just standing there. Not trying to get out. Not calling for help. Just staring into the flames. "He didn't run," she said. He looked at me and smiled. Then the floor collapsed beneath him. And he disappeared into fire. There was another knock on the door. This one louder. The voice was gone now. Silence again. Then the sound of something scraping along the lockers. A dragging sound. Slow and irregular, like something heavy being pulled. One of the kids whimpered. The hallway lights went dark. All of them. Then a buzz. My phone lit up. Unknown number. "She's mine." I stared at the message. My hands went cold. Then the lights in my room flickered. Not just once, on, off, 3 times. The classroom phone rang. Old school. Landline. We hadn't used it in years. I didn't answer. I just stared at Ivy. She was mouthing something to herself, over and over. "He didn't burn. He didn't burn. He didn't burn. He's no longer just outside the door." The classroom phone kept ringing. Not a normal ring either, it sounded off. Like the pitch was slightly too high, like a recording played at the wrong speed. And it wouldn't stop. I reached for the cord and yanked it from the wall. It kept ringing. No power. No line. But it rang a fourth time, then went dead. I turned to check on the kids. They were frozen, eyes locked on the classroom door. The knob was turning. Just slightly. A slow jiggle. Left. Right. Then a soft rattle. I mouthed "don't move" and reached for the emergency drawer near my desk. Scissors. A heavy stapler. Useless things. My fingers were shaking too badly to grip any of them anyway. Then, from the hallway, a scream. Not a child. Not a teacher. A sound that didn't sound human. It rose like a siren and stopped short, as if cut by a knife. Then something hit the door. Hard. A deep thud, like a body slamming into it. The cabinet blocking it jumped forward a few inches. Papers fell off the shelves. One of the girls started sobbing, covering her mouth to keep quiet. Another thud. And then we heard his voice again. But it wasn't coming from behind the door anymore. It was coming from the vent above us. Let me in. I can't stay out here. I looked up. The ceiling vent grill was trembling, just slightly, but enough. Something was moving inside the walls. Another student, Aiden, pointed toward the back of the classroom, whispering, "It's in the crawl space. I can hear it under the floor." Ivy stood up. She was the only one who did. No fear in her face now. Just something worse, recognition. "He's not here for all of us," she said. "He's only here for me." Then the emergency lights flickered on, blood red, emergency backup. And with it, the intercom crackled to life. All clear. Lockdown over. Return to class. But I knew that voice. It wasn't the principal. It wasn't anyone who worked at the school. It was him. And he had access to our systems now. All clear. Lockdown over. Return to class. The voice over the intercom was smooth. Too smooth. It didn't belong to Principal Harris. It didn't even sound recorded. It sounded like someone pretending to be human. The kids looked at me, confused, but I shook my head. Nobody moves. My phone buzzed again. Another text. Unknown number. You can't protect her forever. I turned off the phone and pulled Ivy close. Her skin felt like ice. She looked me in the eyes and whispered, "He doesn't need the door anymore." Before I could ask what she meant, the lights snapped off. The emergency red glow died with them. We were plunged into total darkness. And then, the smell. It hit like a wave, thick, oily, like burnt plastic and rotting wood. The scent of a house fire that never finished burning. My lungs seized. Several kids started coughing. Through the darkness, a faint orange glow crept in under the door, and with it, smoke. Real smoke. Curling in tendrils along the floor like fingers reaching for us. But we weren't hearing fire alarms. No sprinklers. Nothing. I turned to Ivy, and her lips were moving. She was saying something over and over, eyes closed tight. Not real. Not real. Not real. But it felt real. The temperature was rising. The air thickened. I could feel sweat sliding down my neck, but when I touched it, my hand came back black with ash. Then came the sound. Not footsteps. Not voices. Crackling. Like firewood splitting open. Like bones. And then, from the back of the room, from inside the wall. "Ivy. Come home." The drywall split open in a burst of smoke and splinters. There he was. Still in the red windbreaker, charred and half melted to his skin. His eyes were hollow sockets of glowing amber. His mouth stretched wider than it should have, smiling like a broken jack-o'-lantern. We never finished our goodbye. He stepped through the torn drywall like smoke becoming solid, dragging ash with each footfall. The children screamed. Some scrambled into corners. Others froze. But he didn't look at them. He only looked at Ivy. His mouth opened, no lips, just cracked charcoal skin and ember-like teeth. Come with me. You're all that's left. I stepped between them. My body was shaking, but I stood my ground. She's not yours, I said. Not anymore. He didn't move. He didn't blink. Just stared. And then, for a moment, something flickered, like he wasn't sure what he was, or why he was there. And Ivy stepped forward. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She pulled something out of her coat pocket, a silver locket. Burnt around the edges, just like her memories. You stayed to watch the fire, she said. You didn't save her. You didn't try. The thing in the windbreaker tilted its head. She screamed for you, and you watched. Something in its chest crackled, like glass breaking from the inside. Then Ivy opened the locket. Inside was a photo, her mom, smiling. The only thing that had survived the fire. She whispered, "Goodbye, Dad," and dropped the locket into the ash at his feet. For a second, nothing happened. Then his body fractured, splitting along glowing seams, fire pouring out like veins of lava. The red windbreaker caught flame, peeling into smoke. He didn't scream. He simply collapsed in on himself, folding into ash and cinders, as if he'd never fully existed at all. The room was silent again. The smoke cleared. And the wall was whole. The power came back 5 minutes later. No one ever explained the lockdown. The school claimed it was a false alarm. They never found any structural damage. No footage. No trace of entry. The only thing left behind was the silver locket, melted into the floorboards where he'd last stood. Ivy doesn't talk about him anymore. But some nights, when the wind is just right, I'll catch the faintest smell of burnt plastic in the air. And see Ivy staring at the window. Just watching. Waiting. Like she knows. Some fires don't die. They just move on.